Unbelievable. Still can't believe he's asking, what's your badge number? He's the sheriff. You haven't seen his picture anywhere? All right, so tonight we're asking you, the 13th juror, who is right and who is wrong in that video. We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day. Coming tonight from Carla. The person recording had no right to ask why they pulled over the car. Stand back when asked and stop arguing. This is a person who wanted a conflict and wanted to make the next big cell phone video. Funny how when the sheriff reached for the pepper spray, he backed off quickly. DeWitt, what's your verdict on this one?
Carla, you're wrong. He has a right to ask, but the sheriff also has a right to tell him to stand back. And look, maybe you can't blame the guy. Maybe he doesn't understand what all those bars and stars mean. But they made it pretty clear to me that that's the sheriff. If he says stand back, then you might want to take that advice.
Diana tonight. That citizen was definitely in the wrong. The sheriff was right. He needed to stay away, involving himself in something he had no right to be in. And there's a lot of folks like this now, citizen journalists who are out there making YouTube videos and social media videos.
Right.
But who's crossing the line here?
Well, I mean, the videographer, I guess we call him. I'm with DeWitt on his comments. Those are excellent. And also with Diana, I mean, I should have like a personalized plate that says for cops instead of legally blonde, because I've defended police for so many years. But, you know, I'm always usually on the side of police officers, and definitely with the sheriff here.
Our next one comes from Nancy, who writes, the citizen has the right to film anything he sees in public. Lawrence, that's right. I mean, there was a time where we saw a bunch of these videos where police would say, stop recording. They don't say that anymore.
Yeah, listen, here's the deal. The sheriff has a right to secure a scene and make sure no one's a threat to him. And so he could have someone go safely back at a distance to record. I mean, he'd get charged with obstruction of justice or investigation because the sheriff doesn't feel comfortable with this guy peering over his shoulder, recording everything. I think the sheriff is in the right in that situation.
Yeah, that seems to be the overwhelming viewpoint of the 13th juror tonight. Walt, if an officer asks you to step back, just step back. The camera can zoom. And people don't need to be walking up on cops during a traffic stop. Back the blue. DeWitt, I guess there's two sides to that, right? I mean, we have seen a lot of videos. We just were talking about the George Floyd case, and that's, again, citizens recording things. So what's your advice to someone who sees something and has a cell phone?
My advice is you have a right to film the officers, especially if they're in the public view. However, you do not have a right to interfere with the investigation that the officers are performing. If the officers do ask you to step back to a reasonable place and or position, then you should do that. It doesn't mean, though, that they cannot or have to stop filming or that they have to get in some type of position that prevents them from filming the officer. So it's a delicate balance that has to be taken on a case-by-case basis to evaluate whether or not the person's behavior was lawful.
Absolutely, well stated.
The sheriff didn't say turn it off.
He said turn it off?
No, he said he didn't say turn it off.
He didn't say
it. Yeah, sorry.
Exactly. Jerry tonight. The last thing law enforcement needs in the middle of an incident is to explain himself to a private citizen. I started my career in law enforcement in 1976 to 2009, and this behavior never would have been condoned. And I think that was the other part of it, the questioning and the accusations in the moment. It kind of adds to the intensity of the entire situation. But on the flip side, again, I go back to the George Floyd case. Those citizens were also asking questions. So as DeWitt says, I guess DeWitt is always right? I guess it's a case by case, and you've got to read the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone's a journalist. Nobody's a journalist, you know, with these photo ops and everything else. You can't, as you know, tape record audio without permission if it's private. But, of course, a police officer doesn't really have the kind of rights that the rest of us do, I guess, in those kind of situations. But what if this was a rape investigation? We don't really know what that was, do we? We don't really know what the officer was dealing with. And he's simply asking this person, reasonably asking him, to step back and to not involve himself or interfere.
Great job tonight. DeWitt Lacy, Ann Bremner, Lawrence